Welcome to the Less Stressed Life podcast. This is your host, Krista Bigler, private practice integrative nutritionist, helping people across the U.S. reverse digestive issues, eczema, and autoimmunity via phone and video consult. To learn more, visit lessstressednutrition.com. Now, on to the show. All right, today on the Less Stressed Life, we are talking fertility with podcast host Sarah Clark. She hosts the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, where she shares functional medicine and natural fertility solutions to eventually reverse infertility. But a little background about Sarah is that when she was 28 herself, she received a diagnosis of premature ovarian failure, which is not a very fun diagnosis. She accepted that and had both of her children through in vitro fertilization. Years later, she realized that the root cause of her infertility was really food intolerance. So I talked to Sarah earlier this week, and I realized like she and I are very much on the same page about a lot of things, which makes for great conversation, right? So she's a certified life coach with accreditation from the International Coaches Federation and a health coach with training from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. She's also the author of Fabulously Fertile, Supercharge Your Fertility Naturally, a cookbook by the same name, and the fertility preparation program. Her fertility coaching program, which includes functional lab testing, supports couples to make diet and lifestyle changes that dramatically improve the chances of getting a healthy pregnancy and baby, is based out of Toronto, and we are so happy to have Sarah with us today.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I mean, we just talked a little bit about your background, but take us maybe from what happened. I mean, you kind of accepted this diagnosis, you had your children, and then years later you realized, hey, wait a second, I could have done something about that. Bridge that gap for us. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, totally. So I always joked in my early 20s, I was having menopausal hot flashes, and looking back, I remember being in HR at the time, like fanning my face, joking about this. And at the time, I had irregular periods. I had my periods maybe twice a year. At that time, I thought it was a good thing. And I had this weird fungal rash on my chest. All of a sudden, I developed dandruff, and then I suddenly developed on my chin. I had this like super greasy chin and a lot of acne. And through my teenage years, didn't have one pimple. And so at that point, I had this plan. I wanted to get married at 25, have my kids at 28. So I continued on with those sort of health issues along the way, and was put on some birth control as well to help with that and regulate the cycle. And then I'm like, okay, wait, I want to have my kids at 28. So I went into, and my periods were still, now they were coming through with the pill, but then I went off the pill and they were still irregular. And then I went into my OBGYN and basically was told I had premature ovarian failure, which is a loss of function of the ovaries before the age of 40, and told me the only way I'd ever have children was through donor eggs. So I remember like leaving the clinic completely in shock. But because I'm a person of action, I went straight to the fertility clinic. I got on a list for a donor egg, and I was lucky enough on the first fresh transfer to have our daughter, and Ava is 17. So this is back in the day when you say donor eggs and people didn't even know what I was talking about. Unfortunately, now to our standard diet and lifestyle, it's a lot more common. And then we had 2 embryos left over from that. And then so I went back in. My husband's like, Sarah, you seem super stressed, but I wanted to have my kids close together. So I went back in, and those embryos didn't work. But on a separate list for a separate donor, and then had our son Will, and Will's 14. So, and then fast forward, my health began to suffer. I had chronic sinusitis, chronic yeast infections, chronic bladder infections, became allergic to like every type of antibiotic. At one point, I thought I had fleas. No, it was the highest in the antibiotics. I had vertigo. I had toenail infections. I was just backed up against the wall. I didn't even know what to do. At the time, I was still in HR, so I decided to take a life coaching course. So I took that life coaching course, had my own personal wake-up call, and then I ended up taking a health coaching course, and that's where I discovered I had these food sensitivities. So I took out, for me, gluten, dairy, corn. Corn was later, but initially it was gluten and dairy. Took those out of my diet, and then lo and behold, the symptoms began to gradually improve, and also making lifestyle changes. And then years after that, I also discovered I had a gut infection, doing some stool testing. I had H. pylori and streptococcus and yeast overgrowth. And then at that point for me, I was fully in menopause. I was like 40 years old when I discovered all this. So it was too late. So if you're still cycling naturally, there's things you can do. And that's really my message is, using the tools of functional medicine looking at diet, looking at that, lifestyle medicine. There's things that we can do to help this and to reverse it.
Yeah, you and I have some differences. We have a lot of similarities. As I hear your story, I hear mine a little bit. So, yeah, that definitely that fungal stuff and just how it manifested on your skin and just, I totally know what you mean. You just kind of think, oh, this is normal, but you get to a point where you're like, no, this is not okay anymore. This is not normal. So you do something about it. And I also had a chuckle about you said you were in human resources and then you took a life coaching course. I mean, how fortunate that you had that intersection where that happened, because it put this new idea into your mind, right? And that's kind of sometimes all we need.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I would have thought I was happy in HR, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, life coaching, oh, health coaching, oh, this is it. And I went now at fertility coaching, and it was never on my radar. I actually did a book writing course with the health coaching school I was at, and I was going to write a book about weight loss. I've never struggled with weight loss in my life, but that's the book I was going to write. And then I'm like, Sarah, your main struggle has been fertility. But for me, I didn't look at it that way, because I thought, oh, it's like, I've been told donor eggs. Some people would think that would be the absolute worst case scenario to go to donor eggs. I actually looked at it differently, just because I just naturally frame things positively. I have no idea. But I just like, oh, I don't need to go through all those years and years of struggling. I just go here and use someone else's eggs, and I was lucky enough it worked.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit more about the diagnosis you received, premature ovarian failure. How common is that?
Yeah, it is. I'm not sure what the stats on that is. Like, it is low percentage. I think it's like under 6%. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure on the exact stats, but it is not as common as, say, PCOS is like 60%. It is more common now for people to have like the low AMH, so the low ovarian reserve, more than POF. But basically, a lot of people will come to me with POF, or if they have low ovarian reserve or unexplained infertility. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think earlier this week we were talking about how hormonal issues is still sort of a Band-Aid word. Like, it's a buzzword, but it's still like there's a lot of root causes underneath hormonal issues. But let's talk about something that I think we both definitely agree on is, let's talk about common side effects of hormonal birth control. And I don't mean this in a judgmental way at all. It's just that it's about awareness, and we just don't talk about the awareness of what can happen when we're on something for long term. So tell me what you commonly see.
Yeah, because this post-birth control pill syndrome, and I see a lot of people that are struggling with infertility, and many people have been on hormonal birth control, and their period comes back and they get pregnant, it's fine. But there's another segment of people that are been on it for years and years, and they come off and everything's not fine, and then it impacts their fertility. A lot of times when you ask people, well, why did you go on it? The majority of people that I say that is not to for prevention of a child. It's more, oh wait, my cycles were irregular. I was put on it when I was 13, people tell me, or they put it when I was 16 because I had acne, or I had heavy cycles or irregular cycles. So there's usually some reason why it's prescribed, and then people are on it for years and years. And then this is from Dr. Jolene Brighton. She talks about the post-birth control pill syndrome, which will impact your nutrient levels, and then also the health of your gut. So the fact that I was on hormonal birth control pills did that then set up predisposed me to that intestinal permeability, leaky gut, lead to gut infections. Maybe I was on it for years and years. So is that what kind of set the stage? And I think that's something that people, it's instead of being prescribed this pill, why look to see what else is going on in the body as well. And it's funny, my daughter, who, because I didn't focus on my preconception health, both my kids have these food allergies. They're both dairy and gluten free, which being teenagers, I got to tell you, is a nightmare. But so my daughter, she was having issues with her period, and because she was running out and having all kinds of gluten. I'm like, well, maybe if we went off that. But anyway, she's like, I just want to go to the doctor and I want to see what he's going to say. And we went to the doctor. I'm like, okay, I'll humor you here because I'll see what he has to say. Went to the doctor, and he's like, she's like, oh, the periods are really heavy, and I got bad PMS and blah blah blah. And I'm like, maybe I'm talking to her about dietary issues, and he's like, well, the first thing you said is, why don't you take the pill? And she looked over at me and went, okay, Mom, I think you're right. And yeah, and sort of started to make some of the changes herself. So she finally, at the age of 17, I think, kind of gets the correlation with, what she eats is directly going to impact about her, if she's going to have, strong PMS or things like that for her.
Yeah, she sees that direct effect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all are kind of characters of, we don't want to do something that's not easy or fun to us, right? So we have to do what gives us the biggest results. And so sometimes that has to be proved to us in different ways or validated in different ways. So I can understand. Let's go back one step and talk about, often we're put on hormonal birth control. It's probably just like the number one, the only fit. This is the only thing we do, right? I mean, in medicine, this is like, here's our solution for this. Like, this will help normalize these hormones. This is our simple fix. But so aside from that, and maybe that is the one, but what are some other common mistakes that people make when they're trying to improve their fertility? Like, what are things that they miss, or what are things that they're doing that aren't really helping?
Like, to me, it's going to your OBGYN and then, oh, wait, I've been trying for either, over 35, 6 months, and then under 35 a year, and go straight to the fertility clinic. Or I'd be like, wait a minute, that's why I'm doing the podcast, like Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, talking about functional medicine, because, like, why don't we listen to what the body's saying? So if we do have to go to the fertility clinic, and it's not about excluding Western medicine or conventional medicine, it's like, wait a minute, let's listen to what the body will give you signals, it'll whisper, and when you ignore those signals, it'll start, shouting at the form of disease. And that's from Dr. Mark Hyman. But let's listen first. So instead of rushing off down here, doing an IUI, which has a 10% success rate, IVF has an average success rate of 30%. Even donor egg, 50%. People think that's a done for you, but it's only 50%. So if you've got something else going on in your body, like, let's focus on your preconception health first. So maybe you do have a food sensitivity. Maybe you're super stressed and you're working like over 50 hours a week. And, where's that baby going to fit into your life? So looking at mindset, maybe your sleep sucks and, you're getting 6 hours or less of sleep a night. So there's all sorts of those foundational pillars of sleep, stress, looking at a good diet, even if you don't want to look at the food sensitivities, looking at, switching to organic, shopping the periphery of the grocery store, like Michael Palin says. Like he talks about, if your great grandmother doesn't know what it is, then don't eat it. Like, some of these basic things that I think I grew up in a household where my parents were vegan. Actually, when I left, before that, they were vegetarian. So, like, super healthy. My mom was doing like transcendental meditation like 30 years ago when people didn't even know what it was. I was like, tell me your mantra. She wouldn't tell me, but, so she was very into the healthy lifestyle. And then I left there and started eating soup out of Campbell's soup out of a tin. Like, I don't know, like, it was just sort of, I forgot all those basics. I think a lot of us do. And it's sort of like, wait, just take it back to basics.
Yeah, well, the common lifestyle now is go, 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 right? As we already know. And so sometimes if we aren't assessing, if we're just being very unengaged, if we don't have any awareness of our current stress level, having a baby isn't actually going to make anything less stressful. So it's not that will ever go away by just, a lot of times it's kind of like shopping. If we go shopping, we'll feel better, right? That's what we think. Or if we have this baby, we'll feel better. That's what we think. Or if this will happen, if we have this new house, we'll feel better. That's what we think. But really, it's usually something on the inside. And it's hard to tell people that until you have that revelation on your own or that epiphany, right? But I totally hear what you're saying. So if we talk about fertility, this stuff doesn't really happen overnight. It takes a long time to create these issues and also to reverse them. So what's a reasonable timeline if you're working with someone or if someone is working on fertility and they're doing the right things? How long does it take to improve that egg quality, to improve uterine lining, and to improve sperm quality? What's a reasonable timeline that you could expect when you're working on fertility?
Yeah, like, it takes 90 days for the egg to renew itself, 70 to 80 days for the life cycle of the sperm. So it's really that's a minimum. So really, it's like we have a 6-month program, and depending on what's going on in someone's health, it could be up to a year. But it is like in those in a short period of time. Like if someone has got a sensitivity to gluten, when you take that inflammation out of their body, I've had people that read my book and go gluten free and they're pregnant. I've had people that take our mind body fertility program. It's a 6-week program, like uber focus on on mind body techniques, which come from Alice Domar. So she's the pioneer of mind body fertility. She's a Harvard researcher, and her programs include meditation, visualization, journaling, being in a group atmosphere with other people going through infertility and being able to shine like some compassion to them. So then you kind of shines it back to you. So those mind body techniques are extremely powerful, and just making mindset shifts, people can be pregnant quickly. But it is, like, we believe in all of it. We believe in the mind, the functional medicine side of it, with like looking at testing, looking at the diet, removing inflammatory foods, going organic. So to me, like it would probably be like 6 months would be a minimum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet. I like that. I really appreciate that you have a little mind body course, right? It's a digestible It's a digestible piece. This is the piece that no one wants to talk about. I actually can see in my program which modules people skip or what they've finished. People frequently skip ones about stress. It's like they're like, don't have time for that one. So it is a big deal. And I often tell people, well, I mean, you can kind of tell immediately when you get on the phone with someone kind of where they're going to be. Or I often tell them, I say, hey, I mean, when your mindset's not in the right place, you get better a lot slower. You just do. That is how it is. It's almost appalling. It is appalling, and it's night and day to see it in clients. So I'm glad you bring that forefront. So we were kind of talking about egg quality, sperm quality. Let's talk about foods that we consider fertility foods overall.
Yeah, so if you look at the fertility diet, so that's the Harvard nurses study, over 18,000 nurses over the course of 8 years, and then kind of found the best foods for fertility. They talk about like foods that are, so you want to do complex carbs instead of simple carbs. So you want to have your whole grains. I look at it there saying, well, first of all, see if you're intolerant to gluten first. So take that out for a minimum of 3 months. And if you want to do a food sensitivity in there, you can do that as well. But yeah, so looking at whole grains, they found in there about, dairy. They said not to have skim milk. They recommend full fat dairy. My thing is make sure, a lot of times people are quite intolerant to dairy, is the casein, the protein in milk that they can be intolerant to. So to take that out, see if you're intolerant to dairy first. They talk about what else is on there. They're talking about caffeine. So I think actually they talk about caffeine in that one. There's studies with caffeine, so you want to make sure you reduce that. I think there's a study. Well, there is a study talking about one cup of coffee a day is okay, but there's also other studies saying we recommend to go off of caffeine, but not to go off cold turkey. So you want to do a withdrawal kind of period on that, where you can do it over the course of 10 days and really go from, if it's coffee, for instance, you'd go from full calf to half calf to decaf, down to green tea, down to herbal tea. And the same for pop. You want, if you're on any kind of soda, to reduce off of that as well, but filling it with water. So the fertility foods, a lot of it is like it's kind of that common sense stuff of where you're shopping the periphery of the grocery store, not eating processed foods. If it's got, more than those 5 ingredients, you probably don't want to eat it. And then like we just kind of take it a little bit differently, because we'll start everybody by doing a elimination diet. And so then people can see exactly how food impacts their body, because it's different for everyone. Because we can say, hey, you can go paleo or keto, or you can go vegan or whatever it may be. But so we just, with the elimination diet, which is you take out dairy, gluten, corn, soy, peanuts, and eggs, and you take those out for 10 days. Then you systematically reintroduce them over the course of 30, and really making a journal there to see how food impacts your body. So you bring back in corn, if people say, it flares up my asthma, bring back in dairy, I can feel phlegmy, bring back in gluten, I can feel my, digestion issues. So that really is the first step to see, okay, how do you feel? And then while they're doing that, they get the results of the food sensitivity test. Then you can tweak it even further. And we like the same as you, we like the LEAP MRT. And so basically you take the yellow foods out for 30 to 60 days, and then the red foods out for 90 days, and then just tweak it further. And depending on if there's any kind of gut infections, then you need to kind of dig into those as well. So like the food thing can be, you can keep it like totally simple and say, go 100% organic, because, we're in the middle of a huge food experiment. All our food is sprayed with glyphosate. Which studies link that to infertility and other health issues. So going 100% organic is a good first step. If that's too cost prohibitive, you can do the dirty dozen. So there's top foods that are sprayed with pesticides. You want to avoid those, and you do the clean 15, and then kind of keeping it, I guess, going from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So foods, you talked about stool testing. Are there other functional tests that you find essential in fertility when you're working on fertility clients?
Yeah, and so basically people come to us with different fertility diagnoses, but we always will look at the whole person. So it's like looking at the food sensitivity test, and you potentially don't always need a food sensitivity test, but we work a lot with people like in the medical industry and in the medical field. So doctors, nurses, people with like multiple science degrees and all that, and they like the testing. This is what they feel good with the testing. So the testing, then you can actually see, okay, well, what's going on? I'm intolerant to that, and here it is, and I can take it out. The elimination diet can really be quite effective because you can get the results of that food sensitivity test and then do nothing with it. You can just look at it and go, oh my goodness, I'm intolerant to all that. Now what am I going to do? This sucks. And I've had that in the middle of a whole leaky gut, came back, and my food sensitivity test said I was intolerant to all my favorite foods. Mm-hmm. This was after I had done all this healing, and I'm like super committed. Like I get the diet thing for me is nailed in, and I got that test back, and I was just ticked off. I'm like, are you kidding me? What am I going to eat? Yeah. So I had
your gut wasn't healed yet.
No, then I had all those gut infections. I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, the food sensitivity testing is a good one to do. We look at the Dutch test, and then that kind of tells us, where your hormones are. So we've had people that, have been told they have low AMH and donor eggs are for you, when it comes back and their estrogen's just fine. They have a whole whack of like multiple gut infections going on. So the Dutch test can give us clues into like further treatment for using a stool test. So, looking at your cortisol, your melatonin. Then we look at the GI map stool test, and that looks at as parasites or bacterial infections, fungal infections. I don't know if this just what, most people that come to us, there is something we find on the stool test. I don't know if that's just everyone has things on their stool test. That's the way it is, or everyone that comes to us, they're trying to have a baby, and the body wants to survive, doesn't want to procreate. So if there's something going on, typically we will find something on that stool test, and then develop a protocol, the low and slow approach to be able to heal that using supplements. So it is kind of a adding in the diet, and then looking at using those testing as a foundation. And then because a lot of people are kind of that type A, super driven kind of people, they will usually get the diet nailed in. They follow all the advice of the functional testing. And then that whole mindset piece is where there's the struggle, is what we're finding, is where like to slow down, to look at, they may be in this like, super busy job where they're working huge amounts of hours. So that piece is equally as important. And I'm at sort of that masculine and feminine energy. So more people on the masculine energy side of things, and then the feminine energy of like receiving, creating, instead of like the masculine pushing and achieving. And so it's equally as important. So as we go through the program, so the 6 months, you're like at the beginning, it's heavy on the diet, the nutrition, the testing, And then it starts going into lifestyle stuff, like looking at your sleep. So sleep hygiene for months and months, really focusing on that. It's like a cornerstone of health and fertility, like getting your 7 to 9 hours and dark room and all those sort of sleep hygiene tips. And then having people slow down with the fertility yoga, which is like a hatha style of yoga. It's super slow and also includes some restorative poses. And people are like, really? This is so slow. I can't even do this. I want to do like vinyasas. I want to do flows, or I want to do hot yoga and sweat it out. There are a lot of people that we're working with, like they were training for the marathon, or they're like just super like big exercisers. So really to kind of slow the whole thing down,
right?
Which it takes time. If that's your personality and you're like this go, 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 and you're like super exerciser and that, and we're like, I want you to do some slow fertility yoga where you kind of roll here and you roll there. There's some resistance that comes up. Huge.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I want to mention one thing quick before we talk about that, is that I am glad that I agree with you that not everyone needs sensitivity testing, and I think that's important a conversation to have with someone, like, is that a good fit for you or not? I prefer when someone does something generic, sort of like you walk them through, first with just doing a general elimination. I think it's important to have that experience under your belt first, because sometimes you can get a lot done, or sometimes you can get part of the way, and then the testing helps you take it the rest of the way, or, and we all have different ways we apply that or whatever. Right. But something I wanted to talk about is, you alluded to, you get these marathoners, et cetera, with these fertility problems. So talk to us about that, because when we're a big exerciser, and I don't know, I went through this period when I was, the very short amount of time I was ever an athlete, where you get amenorrhea or no period. Right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I've actually got what's her name? Nicola Rinaldi, and she is the author of No Period, and she talks about our episode will probably be going live in January or February, and we talk about amenorrhea there, and really a lot of hers was actually where she talked about is like a lot of calorie restrictions, and I don't even believe in the calorie thing. I'm like, don't count calories, count chemicals. Is not be restricted that way. But so a lot of people with amenorrhea are either like training a lot, like doing so much exercise. And when she was trying to get pregnant, she actually said to herself, she just said, I have to pull this back. Like, I have got to stop this, because she was, she just loved it. It was a stress relief, endorphins and all that. So to just she just decided to one day to really reduce that vigorous exercise and not be as restrictive on her calories. And those were some, eating healthy fats and all of that too. So that was a piece. So it's not that you have to, for fertility, you can look at the high intensity interval training. T-TAP is a kind of a cool one too, where it's like 5 minutes, and it's kind of a funny little video. You look it up, T-TAP, T-A-P-P, and so T-TAPP, and you're just kind of moving your body kind of at the end of it, and after the 5 minutes, the heart is beating, and it's you get a little sweat. Well, not a sweat, but the heart is beating. So high intensity interval training. Fertility yoga, but you want to do the hatha style. You want to do the restorative, so they're slower. Also looking at weight trainings, maybe three times a week, looking at weights. But Billy, it is kind of a slower form of exercise. Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
Yeah. Which I understand why it would be resistance if they were heavy exercisers before. So when we talk about fertility, there's so many aspects you can look at of that whole linear thing or funnel or whatever you want to think about. We think about uterine lining, we think about egg quality, we think about sperm quality, we think about cortisol, we think about, lots of things. So, what are some things women can do to improve egg quality besides, some things that we already talked about? Like, what are some other things in research, would you say?
Yeah, it's funny. I've got a webinar coming up on this next Tuesday because it was my top downloaded episode on my podcast. People are have been told with their egg health, either that their eggs are not of good quality, that that they're of advanced maternal age, that maybe there's unexplained infertility. They have, low AMH or high FSH. And so really, like with the principles of functional medicine, it is really like looking at your diet. Again, so either you start at the beginning saying go 100% organic, and then you can drill it down at a minimum, taking out dairy and gluten for 3 months. If you don't notice improvements, dig into the gut infections. Medications, if you're on the birth control pill, that potentially could predispose you to those nutrient, absorption issues as well as gut health issues. Antibiotics, like me, that literally, like, I am not kidding you, like every sinus infection. I had a cold after my daughter was born. I had 9 colds. Every cold went to a sinus infection. I took antibiotics for every cold. So not a good idea. I completely destroyed my gut health. So if you've been on any kind of long-term like antibiotic use, a lot of people we see have been on Accutane too because they had horrible acne in their teenage years. So all these things that can really, harm the health of your microbiome. Antacids, if you've been like in vaccines like Gardasil, people that can impact it. And then the gut infections, like we talked about, I'd say the majority of people, when they're thinking about their fertility and their egg health, they would never think of doing a stool test. And they may have done the conventional stool test, which potentially could have said everything's fine, whereas that GI map, this is such a really good test and approved by the FDA to really dig into, is there a parasite, is there a bacterial infection, is there a yeast infection, do you have H. pylori, like what's been missed. And then looking at stress, so those mindset piece, like really getting honest about your emotional, mental emotional stress, and getting help on that. Because we live in a stressful. Our lives are busy, and we're running around, and to get rid of stress is just not even reasonable. But to be able to have outlets for that, be it meditation, be it exercise, but not a vigorous exercise, be it just being able to talk to someone, to vent, and to get, to be able to reframe. Because a lot of times people going through infertility, there's a huge amount of triggers, be it someone in the media getting pregnant is a trigger, be it when you're out and you see a pregnant belly is a trigger, being invited to, to people's houses with young children is a trigger. Like it's everywhere they go, and it's very all consuming. And sometimes people will then, it's important to put boundaries around yourself, but also sometimes they will then alienate, just stay in and not even go out, which is at this time, what is needed is connection. And then because it's so harmful, it's so heartbreaking, they actually will pull away from people that potentially that they need. So it is, very brave, Brene Brown, brave to share your story, but it's to share it with a trusted person, because you don't want to be sharing the wrong person, and then that kind of can backfire, right? And maybe confirm some of the things that you were thinking about, whatever they may be thinking about you. So the mental emotional stress part is huge. Environmental toxins. So again, with going organic, looking at your personal care, so switching out your personal care products. I think the average woman is like 127 products that are on her skin when she leaves the house. So those are, can impact your endocrine system, and so to really, and not to throw everything out all at once, but to gradually, as things finish, to start looking for a natural product. I didn't do that till years later. I don't know, for some reason I could do the food thing, but I never, like the toxins with the environmental toxins, and I have the MTHFR gene, so I didn't even really, so for me it was even more important. So to getting rid of this, so the personal care, switching that out, looking at your cleaning products, switching out your cleaning products to natural ones, looking at your water, especially if you have a thyroid issue going on and you want to, make sure that you don't have fluoride in your water. So I like the Berkey, Berkey. That's a good one. The water just tastes better. It's like super delicious water. Today I accidentally had some water from the tap because someone had put it in the kettle, and I had my tea. I'm like, why is this water? Like it almost makes me like choke now because it's so dry or something. It's interesting. And now, yeah, and our water is filled with birth control pill residue as well in there, as well as antibiotics and all sorts of other things. So really getting a filter on your water, and also especially if there's a thyroid thing going on. Again, a lot of people that we work with, there's either there's Hashimoto's going on that was undiagnosed, or misdiagnosed, and undiagnosed, or it was they have hypothyroidism, and then you're getting all that water in the shower, which then has fluoride, which then you can be inhaling all the vapors from the water. So the environmental toxins there, and switching your plastic to getting rid of your plastic kind of Tupperware, going to glass, using a glass water bottle or a stainless steel water bottle. That's important. Vitamin D. A lot of people that see us, so the functional levels for vitamin D are 60 to 80. And a lot of the times we see people, vitamin D is sometimes as low as like in the teens, but like 20 to 30. So then working with your physician to increase your vitamin D levels is important for egg health. So all those things are good for egg health.
So let's talk about sperm. How often is it the sperm that is the problem? Do you know? And what are people doing that's degrading their sperm health most commonly, or what can they do to improve that?
Yeah, so it's 60% of the time it's female factor, and 40% is male factor. So a lot of times they're like, oh, it's just a woman, but no, it takes two to tango on this. And there's lots of things that men can do for to help with sperm. Actually, I had Dr. Tom O'Brien on the podcast, and he was talking about the importance of for both partners. He won't treat someone, or he won't help people that are going through infertility unless both partners go gluten-free, because there's studies that he is that are linking actually both couples to go gluten-free. I don't have the name of the study actually, but he referenced one in the podcast. And
to be clear, just in case someone's listening and they don't know who Dr. Tom O'Brien is, you did cut out there for 1 second, so I don't know if you just said it, so sorry if you did. But he's like a big gluten-free famous doctor, right? Essentially.
He's a world-renowned gluten-free expert. He started the Gluten-Free Summit, which was back, I think, in 2016, and he's got a new book out on brain health. And yeah, so it's a pretty good podcast episode there. He really went like hardcore. It's like, okay, people, basically at a minimum, going dairy and gluten-free for 3 months. And if you don't notice improvements, then you got to dig deeper into the whole gut infection side of things, because that, you either get pregnant by doing that, and if you haven't, it's time to dig deeper. And then for men, it's like looking at like phytoestrogen. So you want to make sure you're not having a lot of soy. Sometimes people will switch their diet, and if they maybe go vegan or plant-based, they have more soy products, which that's contraindicated for sperm. So you want to stay away from that. What else? So yeah, for men is definitely the environmental toxins are huge. So looking at like the plastics and the personal care and the cleaning chemicals, that has a major impact on sperm. What else? Sorry, I'm just blanking right now. What was the other thing? The EMFs, the electrical magnetic field. Yeah. EMFs. So basically, not having your laptop on your lap, taking your phone out of your front pocket, those and also for sperm, like I think people know these ones about not, sitting in a hot tub and keeping it, warm in there is not recommended. But there's a lot of dietary changes to me is to look at as well. And a lot of times we come in with female factor infertility, and the man's like, oh, my sperm is fine, the count is great, and then when we look at their blood chem, and we look at it through the lens of functional medicine, and then we find there's a couple areas we want to dig into, which potentially could be, maybe there's a gut infection that we could potentially say that may come up if we look at your blood chem, or absorption of minerals, whatever it may be. When you dig in there, we found men that have H. pylori, or they have a gut infection, or they have something going on. So like it takes two to tango in the fertility thing, and really optimizing preconception health for both partners is recommended, even if it is just presenting with female factor fertility.
Yeah. How about alcohol? How often is that what would you say about that being a role, and how much does it impact fertility?
Yeah, like there's I don't have the exact studies. There is a study in my book about it. But off the top of my head, so basically we recommend not consuming alcohol. But if you are to go to a party or something, if you can get organic wine, that would be better. Or you can do like a spritzer. I just think if you're, preparing your body for a baby during this period of time, consuming alcohol may not be the best idea. But it's not, if you're not going to go, if you're going to a party or a celebration and you want to have some, that's fine. I'm actually interviewing someone on my podcast about, she has this book called Sober Curious by Ruby Warrington, and talking about, there's a whole, not to say people are alcoholics or anything, but there's a whole movement, and she's set up these events in New York City called Sober Curious, about how would it be if we actually went out to a party or to an event and didn't drink? Because there's so much in our culture about us, when we go out, we have to somehow have alcohol. Where and it was actually in her book, and her movement was in Time magazine on mindfulness. So it's like this mindful approach to interacting. Because a lot of times people could have social anxiety or other issues, and sort of mindfully approaching these things. And well, why are we drinking? And do we need to, back in the university days, do we need to go and do all that? And if we are drinking that much, to me, for fertility, it's not recommended.
So Sarah, if you had to give people, we talked about a lot of things today. So we talked about kind of your story and how all those P's, pesticides, plastics, personal care products, etc. We talked about hormonal birth control. We talked about reasonable timelines, which I find helpful. It's good to have realistic expectations. We talked about some of the foundational things that can be going on. If you had to give people one actionable piece of advice, or just to the woman listening, even, or either the couple, whichever one you choose, if you had to give a piece of advice to this person trying to conceive, what would it be?
It really is, and it's that quote, I think it's from Dr. Mark Hyman, but really, your body will whisper to you, and when you ignore the signals, it will start shouting at you in the form of disease. So to really just to step back and say, okay, well, what's going on here? Like what, feeling digestive issues every time I eat, or always having people that come to us with chronic migraines and headaches. Like there's other things going on besides the infertility. And even though people say I'm healthy, there's other things going on, otherwise you'd be pregnant. So I think it's really important to listen to your body before you charge full steam ahead to the fertility clinic, to let's at least at an absolute minimum taking the 3 months because of the egg, the egg to renew itself, and the sperm, the life cycle of the sperm. So taking that 3 months to eat some great foods that are nourishing your body, and maybe listen to see what else is going on in there as well. Just dig a little deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really funny you say that, because I interviewed some friends on hormones recently, and they basically gave the same quote in different words, and then I've been using it. So it's really funny that you said that. Hopefully people are catching that quote a little bit. I didn't know it was from there, so it's comical. Okay, so Sarah, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Fab Fertile, so fabfertile.com. Also on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. That's on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.
Yeah, and then you had a free fertility yoga download, and that's at yogafreebie.com, right?
That's right, yeah. So it's a 20-minute fertility yoga experience, so you can really experience some of the poses that'll be helpful for fertility. And really, again, it's like slowing down and taking things easy and really focusing on self-care, which is huge.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Okay, Sarah, thanks so much for sharing this today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
One of the best gifts you could give us at the Less Stress Life is your feedback. We are paid in podcast reviews. If you enjoyed this or any other episode, please leave us a review. In the iTunes store or from your podcast app, just search for Less Stress Life as if you're not already subscribed. Click on the banana face image, scroll to the bottom where it shows the text of other reviews, and write a review. While you're there, hey, make sure you hit subscribe. For Android or Stitcher users, you gotta go to the desktop site and search for Less Stress Life and then scroll down to leave a review. Stitcher doesn't load Apple reviews on their site, so if you want, you can leave a review in both places. Your feedback means a lot to the success of the show. Thanks so much for taking the time to do that. You rock.